Hi there, I'm Max, and today I'll be redesigning a dark mode version of the product list view in Oasis, an iOS product rating app. Let's start with what we're creating today. On the left, you see a recent screenshot of the app as it currently is designed, and on the right, you see this dark mode redesign concept of the product list view. Before getting into this design concept, I want to say I'm in no way affiliated with Oasis. I paid for my subscription, and I'm just doing this redesign concept for fun. I find the app to be extremely useful, so I want to point out that this concept is meant as a constructive critique of the current app, but it's not meant to drag down or diminish the work the team have done. There's enough negativity in the world. This video is only meant to be inspirational and instructional. So a bit of context about the application itself. As I understand it, the initial intent was to create a resource that would highlight which water products were the cleanest. Using lab report data, the app created a score that helped users navigate a very busy marketplace of expensive water that might or might not actually be providing healthy alternatives to tap water. Since then, Oasis has grown to include a number of different product categories, including protein bars, shower filters, energy drinks, activewear, baby food, cleaning supplies, and more. And for this redesign, I'm focusing on creating a dark mode version of the product list view in the iOS app. Currently, dark mode isn't available, and as a permanent dark mode user, it's visually jarring to open apps that still don't support dark mode. And I'll only be addressing a single view in this video, but I might redesign other portions of the app in the future if there's interest. So leave a comment if you'd like to see me redesign other sections of the Oasis app, or if there are other apps you'd like me to redesign. So with all that context in place, let's take a look at how I created this redesign concept. It's worth noting that when creating redesigns, some elements may remain in place for weeks, months, or even years. This makes the redesign that much more helpful because when the current design and the updated designs are placed right by one another, it's clear which elements were changed or updated. But with the nature of Oasis, there are new lab reports that can be released at any time. As these lab reports are released and updated, product ratings will typically change. So I first took the reference screenshots for this project on Sunday, December 21st, 2025. As I record today, Tuesday, December 30th, 2025, some of these ratings have changed. So Lunin, as you'll note here in the initial screenshots, had a 96 rating for still and sparkling water. I checked the app today. These ratings are no longer valid. I kept these in place because this was the visual reference that I went off for the redesign. But please understand that you should reference the app directly if you'd like to see up-to-date ratings. Don't strictly adhere to the ratings shown here, as they represent only a moment in time and might have changed even by the time you're watching this video further into the future. Just a note as we get going. When I set out to create redesigns, I will set QuickTime screen recording and let it record as I go through the process. Sometimes I have a good understanding of how long something will take, and other times, like the case with this project, it was much more of an open-ended hit record and start redesigning, never sure how long it's going to take. And at the end of this project, there were 20 parts of screen recordings. Some of those were longer, some shorter, but all told, there was 10 and a half hours that these screen caps are going through. And I trimmed that down to a svelte 12 minutes. So in iMovie, yes, I use iMovie because I'm not a real video creator, not yet at least. I have the speed set at 5,000%. And what you see in the beginning here is setting aside the initial screenshot and starting to use that as a reference point. Sometimes, depending on the design, depending on the UI or the visual design of the existing app, I will overlay my Figma frame and redesign it one for one. But in this instance, setting it aside off to the side, I had a sense going in that I wanted to make it more visual, not only as I was making it into dark mode, but just thinking of how this same visual language could be used if the app were to incorporate it into both light and dark mode. And here I'm setting up a reference point for the cards. I knew that I wanted to take those images of the water bottles and make them more pronounced, visually larger. I have found that as I've used the app, the imagery itself is really helpful. A lot of these brands, especially with the bottled water category, will have a distinct design. And as you're seeing here, when I'm redesigning in the abstract form, this Lunin bottle, I found it was a nice calling card. It was a nice visual representation of what the app could be. Something that I often do, but it's not always possible in an app, is I have what I call the across the room test. And it's very, very simple. The title isn't very creative. It's the idea that if you were to look at an app, whether it was on somebody's laptop or on their phone or their tablet from across the room, would you be able to tell what that app is? Is it distinct enough visually? And something that I can do with certain apps, it's not always possible. Not every app needs to be so visually distinct from another. But in this instance, I thought from across the room, you could see these color gradients cutting across the cards. And that mixed with the imagery that makes it unique could have the app stand out. So that if somebody were at the grocery store using this app, as is commonly the case, somebody might look over and say, oh, what app are you using? And then that could be a conversation starter. But either way, I wanted a visual fidelity to come through. And by creating these bespoke water bottle representation illustrations, it allows the app to own something, to have the visual fidelity, to have a bit more branding, because the app itself works very well as it's currently configured. But visually, it's lacking a little. So you'll see here with the arrow icons and the drop-down carrots that I'm attempting to make something a little more unique visually. And with rating systems, I knew that I wanted to try a few different visual representations. The current donut chart is nice, but it's been played out a little bit. Not to say that a progress bar is the most original thing. It certainly isn't. But I wanted to start and try to visually differentiate how this progress and rating system could be shown in the app. You'll see I'll go into a section like the tab bar for navigation. I'll work on that for a little bit. Then I'll zoom out literally and figuratively and then start working on navigation in another section of the app screen. Or I'll work on a card or I'll work on an illustration. And for me, this is a way that as I'm designing, I'm kind of balancing different tasks for myself, where this is a self-assigned project as opposed to something for a client or for a full-time role where your work is managed by a product manager. And when doing redesigns like this, it's really fun because there are no guidelines. No one's telling me to do this. And it's just for my own enjoyment. And in the instance of this video, it's to show somebody a little bit of an insight into how I personally design, which isn't to say it's the right way to do it. But when I look at a design, I try to break down how would I create this? Or if it's something I'm redesigning, how would I improve this? And a lot of times it's the compilation and the stacking of those little details that over time you look back, and it's fun to look at these time lapses because I remember where I was thinking about certain changes. This ribbon icon for top rated, that to me was an emphasis on doing something a little different than how it's currently positioned, with top rated being a star. To me, it's kind of like a fallback icon, like an icon that might be a default. And you'll see later on that I actually changed the top rated icon into a trophy because I wanted to make something that was a little more emblematic of aspiring to be the best. And a ribbon is nice, but trophy is usually the symbol you see. And in this instance, you'll see another taking of a current product image. And instead of just using a photo, which is nice, creating something distinct, creating something that you can own, or you can own the visual of something. Of course, the copyright and the intellectual property associated with these brands is their own. Another thing I did here was, rather than keep the current navigation where the first tab is the search, I just called it home because search is something you can do, but home is really, that's the anchor of this. And that's something that more people are familiar with. So search can be a feature that you add something, that you add onto something, but home is the starting point. So here you'll see there's kind of the point where I start to understand what I'm creating. And by that, I mean, I know that this is a dark mode redesign, but there's a point where I start to see how I'm gonna find that final form. But it's a matter of, I need to get there. I need to improve the fidelity. And what I'll do, around this stage, perhaps a little sooner in the process, is I'll just create a form, a note that has different sections of to-do list items. And these are short blurbs, kind of cliff note versions to myself, but they'll say improve the fidelity of the progress bar or the lab report icon. And that's what you'll see here is it started to take form and it started to look like something I was liking, but like the progress bar, it just doesn't feel right. And I would encourage designers that, especially the ones that are getting started and they're not really sure how to take their work to the next level, so to speak. A lot of times, space between projects and coming back with fresh eyes, whether it's later in the same day or a different week, looking at the work you did and sitting there before you design or redesign any of your work, just looking at it. That's what you'll see when I zoom out in a lot of these shots is I'm just taking in what it looks like. I'm thinking, can I make this better? Or I know I'm going to make this better, but I'm not quite sure how I'll make it better. I know it needs to be improved. And that's what a lot of this is day to day, just thinking, how is this going to come off to somebody? Because I've been sitting with it for hours, but when somebody comes into it new, what are they going to be looking for? And adding in these little visual flares to further set aside this design, set it apart from what somebody else might just be able to do with one setting. I think about with the effects off to the right-hand side in Figma, there are many things you can do with just a click. You can change one setting and it can look like something else. But I try to think of it as, if somebody else were to recreate this, would they be able to do it just that easily? Or would they have to spend some time and effort really to make it like I have here? And that's where stacking effects will come in and adding custom shapes. And you see here, all these hours in, that I finally came around and said, you know what, let's change the top rated icon. Let's change the progress bar. Let's add an inset shadow and an inset glare and further pronounce these objects. Add a little bit more shadow where it's helpful, and take the lab report icon and make it something that's more unique. Make it something that's more layered, and always making sure what I have is what I want it to be, going back and changing little things. And it's usually only in the before and after that you can really appreciate all these details, but that doesn't mean that they're not important. And the water bottles in particular, they stayed more or less the same in their construction throughout the process. But later on, and towards the end of this, you'll see that I come in and I dial back the opacity of the water and the glass to really have it be something that's much closer to an actual representation. Because here it has kind of a milky film to it. And visually that's a choice, and I could have kept that, but I decided, let's dial this back. Let's make the water bottles even more transparent, adding in that translucency and adding these kind of flares, stacking the details for the lab report icon, and making sure that accessibility is managed with all the text, but also visual clarity. And if you can have a high degree of visual clarity and a high degree of accessibility and contrast, to me, that's a winning formula for a great app experience. So you'll see there's a lot of little elements that get added here. Glares, they get reconfigured, checked on. I'll look at it the next day. It'll be close, and then it'll be something else that I can change. And I'll say, we can make this better. There's a point with every project, of course, that you have to say it's finalized, but make sure before you hit that point, unless you are on, of course, a tight deadline or a prescribed deadline, make sure that you're proud of something. There's a lot being said nowadays about AI and what the future of it looks like for different roles in different industries. But what I can say is, as long as you're proud of what you're creating as a human being, especially in a creative field like design, that is going to be your calling card. And whether or not you're assisted or replaced or added onto with AI and other tools, make sure to keep that creative spark. Thanks for watching. I hope that you got something out of this video, even if you had the dialogue on mute and you just wanted to watch the time lapse itself and put on your own soundtrack. If you liked this content, hitting the thumbs up would be helpful. Subscribing, there will be more videos in 2026, which is not to say that it's a very high bar with only 2 videos in 2025, but I'm going to keep putting out content like this and trying to help people see the creative process on the design side. Hope everyone has a wonderful start to 2026. Thank you again, and appreciate you spending the time today watching this design. Thank you.